In this video, I'm going to go through an example of how we can create a class and then use that class as an attribute of another class, in particular as an array. Okay, so we can cover some of the issues we're going to deal with that. Okay, so for this example, I'm going to first create a point class. This is just going to model a point on the Cartesian plane. Okay, so I'm going to call it point.h. Okay. The first thing I have to do here is the if in define, okay, point underscore h. Okay. So this is a guard in case it gets included more than once, because that would give an error. Okay. It's going to look like that. And then I need to remember to have my end if at the bottom. Okay. So then I can go ahead and start with my normal class statement. We have a class point. Because I tend to forget it, I'll go ahead and put the ending bracket with the semicolon there. Okay. And for this class, okay, we're going to have a couple of attributes here. Okay. So in our private, we're going to have an int. I guess we do a double for the x value. Okay. And we're going to have a double for the y value. Okay. And as far as the public features that we need, okay, we're going to need a constructor. Okay, so remember constructors have no return type. Okay, and in this case, so we take a double x and a double y. Okay, and then we're going to set x val equal to x, set y val equal to y. Okay, so now note this is going to cause us trouble, the same trouble we had in class, but we're gonna see that error and then fix it. Okay. So we next want to do a display function, pretty basic. Okay. This can be a constant because we don't want it to change anything. Display function should never change anything. So we're going to see out, start with a parentheses. Okay. And actually, I want to switch these around. I think having this named X and having Y makes more sense. And then we can do the X value and the Y value here. I think that's cleaner now that I get to this function. Okay, so then x is equal to the x val, and the y is equal to the y val. I think that makes more sense. Okay, so this is our display function. Oh, before we started. So I'm just going to see out this left paren. Okay. Then I'll do the x value. Then I'm going to do a comma space. Then the y value. And then the right parentheses. Okay. That's all that's going to do. Okay. So that should take care of things for us for this point class. Okay. Got it all in there. We should be good. Okay. So I guess I can go ahead rather than forcing the error. We'll just talk about it here. So what I'm going to do for my line class is that I'm going to have an array of 2 points. Okay. So for the array of 2 points, what needs to happen when we define that array, it's going to allocate the memory for both of those points. But to do so, it has to call a default constructor, okay, that doesn't take any parameters. So I'm not able to do that currently. Okay, so I can just change that by putting a 0 here, equals 0, and equals 0 there. Okay. So now when I go to create the array of points, it will be able to create them properly, and we won't get the error message of not finding the right version of the constructor. Okay. Should be okay. Now, if I run it, it doesn't like something. It doesn't like, let's see, it doesn't like that line. Let's see what we've got there. Double xval equals 0. Oh, that's a comma. Should be a comma. There we go. See if it likes that better. Yeah, it doesn't like cout because we didn't include IOStream, but I don't think we're going to need to. I think as long as we include it in our test program, we'll be fine. If not, we'll have to go back and add it. Okay, but I think we'll be okay. Okay, so now let's look at this line dot h. Okay, so again, we need our if not defined line underscore h. So if it hasn't already been defined, we're going to define this line underscore h. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and add my end if at the bottom just to avoid forgetting it. Okay, so then we're going to have our class line. Okay, and then for the private, what it's going to have, it's going to have this point array called points that has 2. Okay, so it's an array of 2 points, the 2 endpoints of the line. Okay, and then for public, we're going to start with our constructor. So we have a line. Okay, it's going to consist of a constant point P1. Okay, so we're going to send in a point by reference here. Okay, and then a constant point P2. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to have the points 0 equal to P1. We're going to have the points 1 equal to P2. Okay, that should all be all we need to do here. Okay, so we can also add here a couple of functions. We can start with a display function, just like we had before. Okay, that could make some sense. Okay, so it'd be a void display, takes no parameters, constant, again, because we don't want to change anything. Okay, so we're going to have to do a cout line from. Okay, and the first thing that we want, so that's going to get that first line. We're not doing a new line, so we're still on the same line. Okay, then I can display the point from the points sub 0 dot display. Okay, so I'm going to take advantage of that function. Okay, then I'm going to cout space to space. Okay, and then do the points sub 1 dot display. Okay, should do that. Let's say we also want to be able to determine the length. Okay, that seems reasonable. So the length will be a function. And remember the length a of a line, we have a formula for that you can look up if you've forgotten. It's basically going to be the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, all that under the square root. Okay, x2 referring to the second x point. Okay, so we can use that formula here to calculate our length. Okay, so for this, okay, we're not going to take any parameters. It's going to be a constant function. as well. Okay. I'm going to display the length in my display function, so that's why I have to define it above that for it to work. Okay. So I can start by looking at the double dx here, okay, which is going to be a variable I'm using to hold that difference between the x. That's what the dx stands for, okay, which is going to be points 1 dot x minus points 0 dot x, okay. And then the dy is going to look about the same, so I'll go ahead and copy that, except we're changing everything to y's. And we could do one gigantic equation, but I think this tends to make more sense doing it this way. Okay. So once we've got that, then we can just do a return of the square root. Okay, so this means we're going to need to have somewhere along the way our CMath library loaded. Okay, square root of dx times dx plus dy times dy. Okay, that's all that's going to do. And now I can add to my display function. I'm going to see out here with, so space with length, colon space, our length function, then inline. Okay. And I didn't take the time to add in my closing parenthesis or closing bracket with the semicolon. So I've done that now. Okay. Take a look at this. Look at this one. It's going to complain about the square root, probably. Yeah, it complains about a lot of stuff. Right, it doesn't know about point. So there's a lot it doesn't know about. Okay. I did mistype the if not defined. So that's the issue that I need to correct. Okay. So now as far as our test program, let's go ahead and do the test program. If I have to go back and add in CMath to this one, we will, but I think I can add it in my main function. I'll be okay. 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 So save that one. Let's call this line test CPP. Okay. So here I'm going to include my IO stream as always. I'm going to include my CMath because we need the square root. Okay. I'm going to include point.h. And I'm going to include the line.h. Okay. And just make our life easier, I'm using namespace standard as well. Okay. So then in int main, let's start by making sure that we can declare values. Okay. If not, we've got trouble right off the start that we'll have to fix. Okay. So let's say I want to say point P1. So it takes a 1.5 and a 2.0. Okay, let's do a point P2, which takes a 4.0 and a 5.5. Okay, and then I want to say a new line called line. Okay, L1 would be very confusing, and line's okay since I've got lowercase, with P1 and P2 as the points for it. Okay, then when I say line.display. Okay, let's see if this works. See what we have to go back and fix. Okay, doesn't like something. Doesn't like a fair bit of stuff. Okay, so let's try to figure all this out. Okay, and the point function. Okay, it's not including those as I would like. Okay, so because of that, yeah, let's go. I don't see any issues with the math function, which is interesting. Apparently my point I've named display wrong, so let's go back and check. Okay, so the first issue it had was with this, okay? It wants me to include IOStream. It wants me to use a namespace standard. See if that makes it happy. I left the S out of display, so that should make it somewhat happier. Clear my screen. Okay. Still unhappy with a lot of stuff. Okay. Redefinition of constant void. Oh, I'm doing P2 twice. Yeah, that's an issue. Line 26 and line.h. Oh, yeah, that would be a problem. Okay, let's clear it out again. See what else we got. Still have issues. Okay. So in the line, when I'm calculating these, oh yeah, that's a good point. I'm not able to get to X or to Y, okay? Because those are defined as private, okay? Back in my point class, okay? So I have options here. So probably the most straightforward thing to do, and we can talk about the issues here. Um, I could just make this public as well, okay? Because it's just a point and there's not really much to go wrong with it. I think that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, so if I didn't want to do that, if there are reasons that I wanted to keep it private, then I could add an accessor and a mutator. Okay, and in this case, I think all we need is an accessor. But I think I'm okay because there really aren't any limitations to what X can be as long as it's a double. Okay, it can be any point that we want. Okay, so that should solve that problem, hopefully. Okay, now we're good. See if it works. Okay, and then we have our results here that we're looking at the first point we entered, okay, which is at 1.52, okay, and we're going to point 4 at 5.5, and then showing the length here. Um, is this length correct? I don't know. Um, looks like it could be reasonable. We would want to calculate that to make sure. Okay, I think that would make the most sense. But I think we're in the ballpark here. Again, another way you can do that. Let's see if we were to go into line test, not to compile it, but to run it. That's not what I want. Kind of a forced example here. If you make the numbers where the math is easier, we could do 1.0, 1.0, 1.0, 1.0. Okay. When we do this, this will be 1 squared plus 1 squared. Okay. Which is equal to 2. And then we get the square root of 2. Let's do something that will get something a little bit better. What if we do, trying to think one that's going to work out evenly. So we're going from, oh, this is from the same point, same point. So if we would go from 1, 1 to 1, 2, I'm thinking correctly, that should give us an answer of 1, I think. Let's see. I could get my calculator out and verify the first answer, but let's go this way. Yes, I'm thinking correctly. So by forcing this example, we're just moving one space over, okay? And that should be fine, okay? Um, so yeah, that should be good. So I go look at the pro code one more time. So again, we have our point class. We have our guard here, okay? And we're using namespace, we're including IOStream. It seemed to want that. Maybe it really wouldn't have wanted that when we fixed the other errors, but certainly doesn't bother anything for it to be there. Okay. So here we made the decision after it gave us an error. We thought about it. We are going to keep the X and Y public so we can access them directly in other places. Okay. We have our display function that just displays the points. Okay. And then our constructor, remember, because we're going to use this in an array of points, we have to have a default orientation. So both of these have equal 0, which means if we don't send anything, they'll just default to 0, which is fine. And then we're setting the values equal to that. Again, we're not worried about any limitations. Any double is fair game. Okay. We then went and defined our line class. Okay. Also, we have our guards here, and don't forget that end if at the bottom. Okay. And for here, the only member data or the only attributes we have is going to be an array of points. So this is where that point um, default constructor has to happen. Okay. So in our test program, when we initialize a line, it's going to go ahead and get the memory for an array of 2 points. Okay. And have that ready. And to do that needs a constructor. Okay. And then the functions we have here, our constructors down here, we're just going to take 2 points and set those as the 2 points in the array. Okay. And then we have a display function, which is going to use the public display function from the point to display what the points look like. Okay. And then it's going to calculate the length, and the length we calculate using the formula and using the square root. Okay. And again, we were fine not putting the CMath here as long as we had the CMath in our test. Okay. Although you could put it there as well, so people would be able to use that without having to remember to do that. Okay, it should work either place. Okay, and then finally we have our line test, which includes the IO stream, includes the CMath, it includes the point and the line, and then we're creating 2 points. We're creating a line with those 2 points, and then we're just displaying the line. Okay. So this is a fairly basic example. I guess it had a little complexity to it, but hopefully it'll help you to review how we can go through and create our classes. Okay, because I know some of you are having some trouble with that.